A baby rhino is being crushed to death by a giant python. Its mother can only watch in helpless terror. But when a colossal gorilla storms in to save the day, the mother rhino's reaction wasn't aggression, it was something unbelievable. The air in the Congo basin is not merely air, it is a living thing. It is a thick, humid blanket woven from the scent of damp earth, sweet rot, and 1,000 blooming, unseen flowers. Sunlight, a distant, golden god, struggles to pierce the colossal canopy, sending down dappled, shifting columns of light that turn the forest floor into a cathedral of shadows. This is a world of breathtaking life and swift, silent death, a sanctuary where peace is a fragile, fleeting commodity. In a sun-drenched clearing where the jungle reluctantly gave way to grassland, this peace was made manifest in two figures. The first was Zola, a female white rhino of immense size and ancient patience. Her hide was a landscape of folds and plates, like ancient armor forged by time itself. Her every movement was deliberate, imbued with a quiet power that radiated from her like heat. The second figure was Kio, her son. He was a clumsy, joyous bundle of energy, a walking contradiction of thick, armored skin and boundless, innocent curiosity. Where his mother was stillness, he was motion. He would charge at butterflies with comical ferocity, only to stumble over his own feet. He would snort at strange flowers and prod at busy insects with his nascent horn. And through it all, Zola watched, her massive head following his every move, occasionally nudging him with a startling gentleness back from the jungle's edge. Her love was a physical presence, a shield as real and tangible as her horn. In these moments, the sanctuary was perfect. But the sanctuary had its shadows. Not just the ones cast by the towering ironwood trees, but living shadows, ancient hungers that predated all peace. Deeper in the tangled green, where the light barely touched the muddy banks of a sluggish stream, one such shadow lay in wait. It did not think in terms of love or peace. It did not feel the warmth of the sun or appreciate the beauty of a butterfly. It was a cold, patient intelligence, a 20-foot-long tube of patterned muscle, a magnificent African rock python. Its world was composed of vibration, heat, and the eternal, singular drive to find its next meal. It lay perfectly still, a mosaic of mud and scale, its unblinking, lidless eye a polished black stone that reflected the green world without seeing it. It was waiting, as it had for days, for a moment of carelessness. For a mistake. And it knew, with the certainty of millennia, that a mistake would eventually be made. Curiosity is the engine of youth, and Kio's was running at full throttle. While Zola grazed, her head bowed to the sweet grasses, Kio's attention was snagged by a flash of impossible color at the edge of the clearing. It was a cluster of orchids, a species he had never seen before, their petals a shocking, vibrant crimson, clinging to the low-hanging branch of a tree that dipped into the murky stream. They were an irresistible jewel in the sea of green. With a happy, snorting sound, he trotted toward them, his short, stout legs carrying him away from the open safety of the clearing and into the treacherous, tangled embrace of the riverbank. He was only 50 feet from his mother, a trivial distance, but here, the undergrowth was a wall of tangled roots and thick, muddy soil. Zola, with her immense bulk, could not easily follow. He reached the flowers, sniffing at their strange, sweet perfume, when the world exploded. It was not a sound, it was a concussion of motion from the water beside him. The shadow erupted. Before Kio could even process the blur of brown and yellow, the python's head struck, its jaws locking onto his hind leg. A high-pitched squeal of pure, unadulterated terror tore from his throat, a sound he had never made before. But it was cut short almost immediately as the first powerful coil slammed into his torso, knocking the air from his lungs in a painful gasp. Zola's head snapped up. The sound of her son's terror was a physical blow. She let out a roar, a sound of thunder and heartbreak that shook the very trees, and charged. But the python was a master of its terrain. It used its incredible strength to drag the thrashing, squealing Kio deeper into the muddy bank, wrapping more coils around his small, struggling body. The scene became a nightmare of helpless fury. Zola, a 2-ton engine of maternal rage, crashed against the edge of the thicket, her horns splintering dead branches. She could see her son, his eyes wide with terror, his small legs kicking uselessly as the serpent's embrace tightened with an audible, sickening pressure. But she couldn't get a clear charge. The mud, the roots, the water, it was a fortress protecting her enemy. Her roars of fury became hoarse cries of anguish, the desperate, pleading bellows of a mother watching her entire world being extinguished before her eyes. The python ignored her, its focus absolute, its muscles contracting in the slow, relentless rhythm of death. High above the chaos, on a sun-warmed granite outcrop that served as his throne, Baruti heard the sound. He was the patriarch of his troop, a colossal silverback gorilla whose quiet presence was the law in this part of the forest. His reign was one of peace, his immense strength a guarantee of security, not a tool of aggression. His dark, intelligent eyes, usually filled with a thoughtful calm, had been watching his own young ones play. But Zola's cry cut through the familiar jungle symphony like a shard of glass. It was a sound that transcended species. It was not the cry of a predator or prey in the normal dance of life. It was the sound of a mother's soul being torn apart. It was a sound of pure, helpless agony. Baruti stood, his massive form blotting out the sun for the creatures below him. He looked down from his perch, his gaze piercing the canopy, and he saw it all. He saw the magnificent Rhino mother, her power rendered utterly useless by terrain and circumstance. He saw the massive, ancient serpent, a creature of the deep jungle, asserting its brutal dominance. And he saw the small, flailing form of the baby, its life fading with every sickening squeeze. An unwritten law governs the wild: you do not interfere in the affairs of other species. A lion's hunt, a leopard's kill, these are not your concern. But what Baruti was witnessing was not a hunt. It was an execution. A slow, torturous annihilation of the innocent while its mother was forced to watch. Something shifted in the gorilla's deep consciousness. It was a choice. A conscious, deliberate decision to shatter the ancient pact of indifference. He was a protector, a guardian. And the sound of that mother's grief was a call he could not ignore. He did not climb down. He descended. Using the thick, powerful vines like ropes and the rock face as a ladder, he moved with a speed and purpose that was terrifying to behold. He was not an animal running, he was a piece of the mountain itself, breaking free and thundering down to dispense judgment. He was a force of nature, moving to correct a profound and terrible imbalance in the world below. The ground seemed to tremble in anticipation of his arrival. Baruti's arrival was not silent. He landed on the edge of the clearing with a ground-shaking thud that sent birds shrieking from the trees. The python, coiled in its grim task, felt the vibration and its head lifted, its black eyes fixing on the new threat. For a moment, the two ancient titans locked gazes. Then Baruti roared. It was a sound of raw, explosive power, a challenge that ripped through the air and declared his intent. He rose to his full, terrifying height and beat his chest with his cupped hands, creating a series of concussive booms that echoed like cannon fire through the valley. It was a declaration of war. He charged. He didn't hesitate at the water's edge but plunged into the mud and tangled roots, his massive hands, as strong and gnarled as ancient trees, seizing the python's thick, muscular body. The snake, startled by the sheer audacity and power of the attack, reacted instantly. It loosened one of its coils from Kyo and whipped it around Baruti's forearm, its muscles immediately constricting with immense force. The battle became a primal, elemental struggle. It was the raw, explosive strength of the primate against the cold, inexorable crushing power of the reptile. Baruti grunted, his muscles bulging as he pulled, trying to physically tear the snake from the rhino calf. The python tightened its grip on his arm, its scales scraping against his black fur. For a terrifying moment, it seemed a stalemate. But Baruti was more than just brute force. His intelligent eyes scanned the chaotic scene, and he saw a heavy, waterlogged piece of a fallen ironwood tree wedged among the roots. While one arm strained against the python's grip, he used his other to wrench the log free. With a furious roar, he raised it high and brought it crashing down on the python's body near its head. The blow was stunning. The python's body convulsed, its crushing grip on both the gorilla and the rhino momentarily slackening. It was the opening Baruti needed. He dropped the log, seized the loosened coils around Kyo with both hands, and with a final, monumental exertion of his entire body, he tore the serpent free. He swung the massive, thrashing snake through the air and flung it into the deeper water of the stream. The python, wounded and defeated, vanished into the murky depths. Silence descended, broken only by the ragged, terrified gasps of Kyo and the heavy, panting breaths of the gorilla. Baruti stood over the small rhino, a dripping, mud-splattered guardian. He turned his head slowly, his dark eyes meeting the gaze of the mother, Zola, who stood frozen just yards away, her massive form trembling, her horn pointed in his direction. The battle was over, but the most dangerous moment had just begun. The air was thick with a tension that was almost electric. Kyo, freed from his nightmare, let out a weak, plaintive cry and stumbled toward his mother. But Zola didn't move. Her body was a statue of conflict, her muscles bunched and ready to charge, her mind clearly struggling to process the impossible scene before her. A gorilla, a rival for territory, a creature of immense and terrifying power, had just saved her son. Instinct screamed at her to see him as a threat, to drive him away from her vulnerable calf. Baruti stood his ground. He did not retreat. He did not make any aggressive moves. He simply stood, his chest rising and falling, and watched the mother, his intelligent eyes filled not with aggression, but with a calm, quiet understanding. He had done what he came to do. The next move was hers. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tension in Zola's great body began to dissipate. The aggressive, forward-pointing angle of her horn lowered. The trembling in her legs subsided. Her heavy, panicked breathing softened into a series of deep, shuddering sighs. She took one, deliberate step forward. Then another. She walked directly to the colossal gorilla who had just waged war for her son. It was a walk of unimaginable trust, a journey across the unbridgeable gulf between species. She stopped when her head was just inches from Baruti's side. He did not flinch. Then, the miracle happened. Zola, the 2-ton behemoth, the fiercely protective mother, lowered her massive head. With a tenderness that seemed impossible for a creature of her scale, she gently but firmly pressed her broad, rough snout against Baruti's flank. She held it there for a long moment. It was not a challenge. It was not a threat. It was a gesture of profound, silent, and deeply moving gratitude. A low, soft rumble vibrated in her chest, a sound of peace and acknowledgement. Baruti remained perfectly still, accepting the tribute. In that quiet, sacred moment, two of the jungle's most powerful rulers spoke a universal language, a language of courage, sacrifice, and thanks that needed no words. Do you believe empathy is a universal language that all creatures can understand? Share your story of an unexpected act of kindness in the comments below. Give a sign of respect for Baruti's courage and Zola's incredible gesture. Like this video, share it with someone who believes in heroes, and subscribe for more unbelievable stories from the heart of the wild.